as the Earth warms up, we expect extreme hot weather to increase much faster, to become much more common in the future than it has been in the past.
First tonight, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced in both France and Spain as wildfires continue to rage. President Emmanuel Macron of France hosted a crisis meeting earlier to discuss how to respond. Let's speak first of all to David Chazan, Times reporter in Bordeaux. Good afternoon to you, David.
Good afternoon, Carole.
I know that those fires have been creeping ever closer to Bordeaux. What is the situation there?
Well, the situation today is a little bit better than it was yesterday because there was rain overnight and the wind dropped a little bit. And I've just been out watching firefighters trying to combat one of the blazes in a village outside Bordeaux. And the fire chief there said that while things are a bit better today and the situation is stable in the sense that the fires have not got any closer to Bordeaux than they were yesterday, he described it as a false calm. Why? Because tomorrow we're expecting the heat wave to return. Temperatures could climb as high as 40 degrees Celsius. The vegetation is likely to dry out, and fires that have subsided could just sort of rekindle almost spontaneously because of the heat.
And
so
we've seen some of those really vivid pictures, haven't we, of wildfires engulfing not just the forests but buildings as well. And when you get up close to us, just tell us a bit more about what it's like, David.
Well, huge flames, there's a lot of pine trees in the forests in this area. And when they go up, they ignite very, very quickly. They look almost like matchsticks just catching fire because they're tall, thin trees. And the system for fighting them is both on the ground and from the air. So today we saw fire trucks spraying the flames with water on the ground. A helicopter circled overhead to pinpoint the exact locations for water bombing planes to come in and drop water on them. They then sounded sirens so that people cleared the area on the ground, and then the planes came in. But all around Bordeaux, I've been driving through abandoned villages where all the houses are shuttered because people have been ordered to evacuate. And in some places, you just see fields and trees that are completely black with hardly any leaves left on them, and also houses that have been completely gutted. In some places you can still see children's toys and swings and so on outside houses that have been completely consumed by flames.
Well, just briefly, David, what about those people who've either had to flee their homes or been evacuated from the areas that are threatened? We're hearing well over 300,000. What do we know about where they've been sent, what arrangements there are, and when they might be able to return?
Well, thousands of them went to reception centres that have been set up both in Bordeaux and across the area. And so these are just basically huge hangar-like buildings or gymnasiums that have been requisitioned. Rows of camp beds have been set up with sleeping bags. Volunteers are bringing food. Supermarkets have donated food. Children are being looked after by volunteers. And there's even pet food because some families have come with their pets. But many of the people who've had to abandon their homes temporarily have relatives in other parts of southwestern France. They have gone on there, and a lot of the holiday makers have just decided to cut their holiday short and head for home. So a lot of the Britons who were caught up in this have already started heading back to the UK.
David Chazan, Times reporter, thanks so much for joining us from Bordeaux. Well, let's speak to Simon Hunter. He's a Times reporter in Madrid. Simon, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Carole. How are you?
Well, I'm fine and good to have you with us. Tell us what the latest situation is, because many of those fires are actually in the areas fairly close to Madrid.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, yesterday I was starting to feel a little bit hopeful that the we were going to get some respite and maybe that the worst was over. But looking at the reports from the authorities today, it's actually I'm starting to look a bit more serious again. Just to kind of give you an idea, when we're talking about the fires in Madrid, we're talking about the fires in the wider Madrid region. So I'm right in the centre of Madrid. The nearest fires that have been burning to the city are about 50 kilometres west of where I am now. So at no point has there been any question that the fires were actually going to encroach on the city. But having said that, we are looking at the worst fire in the Madrid region ever on record. And this is now the worst fire, the wildfire that Spain has seen in a very, very long time. What has happened is that this massive blaze in Madrid has now joined with another fire in the neighbouring Avila province. That's what the authorities have been worrying about pretty much since Friday, when these two blazes really took hold. So what the authorities are trying to do is just to try and contain them and try and stop any spread.
And the Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, he's blamed it very clearly on the climate emergency, on global warming. He's also, though, declared a national emergency. What specifically does that mean?
So the national emergency refers to the fact that the central government has taken control of firefighting and coordination in 3 of Spain's regions. Spain has 17 regions. They have lots of devolved powers, including healthcare and education. And one of those devolved powers is fire prevention, so i.e. making sure that all the dry scrub is cleared from the hillsides to try and prevent fires in the summer, and also firefighting. Now, what happened on Friday was that very quickly the Madrid regional government requested that the central government step in, declare a national emergency in the Madrid region so that it could take control of the situation. It did that in the Madrid region, then in the Castile and Leon region, which is where Avila is. And then on Saturday, I think it also did that in the southern Castile-La Mancha region because the fire had spread to Toledo. So that's what that national emergency situation means. And this is the first time that that's been actually put in place for a fire. Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, he has been saying that we need a cross-party pact. He's governing in a minority, so he's calling for a cross-party pact for more to be done to combat climate change, which, as he says, will have a knock-on effect on preventing these fires. I have to say, he has been very present in this crisis. He's been on the scene, first of all in Avila and in the Madrid region over the weekend, and today he has travelled to Valencia region because yesterday we saw another fire break out hundreds of kilometres, 300, 400 kilometres from here in the Castellón province in Valencia. So that's why the total number of people who have been either evacuated from their homes or told to shelter in place has ballooned from Saturday to Sunday and now stands at something like 116,000 people across the country.
Simon Hunter, Times reporter in Madrid. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, now let's welcome to the show Edward Gryspeerdt, who's Associate Professor of Atmospheric Physics at Imperial College in London. Good afternoon to you, Professor Gryspeerdt.
Good afternoon, Carole. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. We've just heard 2 of our reporters talking about some of the worst wildfires we've ever seen in Europe. Is this becoming the new normal?
So we know that ultimately that fire weather is a combination of heat, drought, and strong winds that gives us the highest likelihood a fire will start and then spread rapidly. And this is closely linked to trends in heat waves that we've seen. So heat waves in general are becoming hotter, longer, and more frequent across Europe, increasing with climate change, and also droughts, where the signal is less clear. But again, across much of Europe, we're expecting to see droughts become more common over time. So while this year might be kind of an outlier, in general, this is part of a longer trend.
Now, we're hearing these warnings about pyrocumulonimbus clouds. Tell us about them and why there is so much concern about them.
So ultimately, all clouds are formed, or almost all clouds form in a rising plume of air, right? So you've got a bubble of air that moves upwards and the cloud forms in it. If you heat the air near the surface, you can get more of these rising plumes of air. They can become more intense, and eventually, if you've kind of heated the surface enough, you can form a kind of a cloud, or indeed a thunderstorm, a much larger cloud. Now, ultimately, as the water in that cloud condenses to form little droplets, that heats the air even further and kind of enhances that updraft even more. So you think about fires, they're drawing air inwards because the air is leaving and flowing up. And so ultimately, if you're enhancing that upward flow of air, you're enhancing the air being drawn into the cloud as well. And so that kind of enhances the winds in the local area and can further the spread of the fire.
And can actually lead to, I've seen it described as leading to these fire thunderstorms.
Yes, exactly right. So if the cloud gets kind of large enough, the storm gets severe enough, it can start forming lightning as well, which then becomes another issue because the lightning can start fires in kind of other regions as well.
And how much concern is there about the fact that these fires, they just simply seem to be raging beyond the control of the authorities in both France and Spain, pretty sophisticated areas. Clearly, they always do have wildfires during the summer. We've got planes clearly dropping water and so on. But none of this seems to be enough to actually contain the blazes.
I have to say, fire management is less by area, but ultimately we do know that these fires are going to be I guess, more common going into the future. There are kind of investments in adaptation going forward, so kind of planning for this. The EU, for example, has a large number of firefighting planes on order for dealing with these events in the future. But it is something we're going to have to become used to as we kind of head into this kind of warmer world.
And briefly, I mean, here in the UK too, because we're into, well, I'm being told it's the fourth heat wave. It feels like a continuation of one long one to me. But I mean, record temperatures again predicted over the next few days. Is this part of that same system that we're seeing that we here in the UK, just as in Europe, should be perhaps taking greater plans to prepare for in future?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, this is one of the key things we know about climate change, that the Earth is warming up thanks to the emission of greenhouse gases. And so as the Earth warms up, we expect extreme hot weather to increase much faster, to become much more common in the future than it has been in the past.
Professor Edward Gryspeerdt from Imperial College in London. Really good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.